generally thank you for attending. I know that after lunch it's like really challenging to focus on anything except basically chilling out and having kind of food coma. So hopefully I will keep you awake today. You see that people are like glancing and then passing by. Don't look attractive enough to go in. It's almost like on exam right now. It's like dead silence, even though I haven't. Okay, majority of them, of you. Okay, that's good. How many of you are from Europe? Okay, I see like one British gentleman that doesn't raise his hand up. Well, do we have anyone from US? No one from US. Oh no, one gentleman. Okay. Do we want anyone from Asia? Ah, okay, few. Okay, that's nice. That's nice representation. But I see that Australia dominates. I don't know why. Okay, I think that maybe we slowly can start. What do you think, guys? Yes? Yeah. Okay. How did you enjoy the lunch? Good. Good food. I think that it was really good because you're like kind of food coma, not cheering. Good. Okay, today we'll be talking kind of, it's related with food, like gluttony. Because gluttony usually when you're talking about it is related with like, eating a lot and a lot. With features could be similar in terms that people want more and more. And then suddenly we realize that if we have a lot of on our plate, well, sometimes we can't eat it, and sometimes, in terms of the feature, we just increase the complexity, and it's not really that, good as we thought in the first place. So, my name is Kasia Mrowca, and I will be your host today, and the title of my talk is How to Defeat Feature Gluttony. And I see one person outside the door. Come on, no. Told you guys, I'm not looking attractive enough. Well. Okay, but I hope that you'll enjoy my talk anyways. So what this feature gluttony is actually about? This is the carving I start talking about, so want more and more. The question is why? And we will try to answer this question during my talk, and also I try to give you a bit of a recipes how we can deal with it and how we can maybe improve and how we can talk with our business partners and our technology partners in order to avoid constant growing wish list, which unfortunately sometimes happens. So who I am? I'm Kasia. Originally, I'm from Poland. It's a country in Central Europe, but right now I'm based in London. So that's why I don't have like lovely British accent. I'm really strongly connected with Agile community. I was co-organizer of Agile Lean Europe, which is like Agile Conference, really popular. I'm also a part of the community which is called Agile in Europe, so the same as a conference, surprise. In back home in Krakow, where I'm originally from, I was one of the organizers of Agile Lean Enthusiasts. Feel free to follow me on Twitter. How many of you guys use Twitter? Perfect, so you can also tweet, you can make pictures if you like something. If you doesn't like something, you can tweet as well. But I like feedback, I would like to improve. We Agile people like to improve, so if you spot something that could be better, just let me know. We can discuss after the talk, or you can tweet. I prefer talking, communication is the key. Also, I have my own blog, so feel free to check it out. I try to also describe kind of nice tips around how to improve communication, how to improve requirements gathering, and all those things connected with scope. And if you don't want to tweet, don't want to talk with me, and don't want to read my blog, but you have still questions, you can reach out to me via email. So let's start. What the gluttony is and why actually it's bad, or actually is it bad? Because, you know, we are paid for delivering features after all. So if our customers want more and more features, it's good, isn't it? We get money, so we can pay our bills. But then on the other hand, sometimes it makes our life more miserable because our software is getting more and more heavy. Maybe one other question before I go forward with this. How many of you works in startups? Okay, few. And how many of you works in like companies 500 plus of size? Okay, few. Okay, another question. How many of you works on products that are older than 1 year? Okay, keep your hands up. Older than 5 years? Older than 10 years? Okay. Older than 15 years? My God, still there are a few hands up. Older than 20, I'm scared to ask. Okay, I won't ask more. So in terms of my background, currently I'm a consultant, but before I was working in software vendor company, software house, and internal IT department. So I seen like full path. I was working and I was advising for startup as well as for companies that are more established on the market. So I work in a various environments, and basically what I saw that basically if our software grew older, it's like more and more difficult if we have a lot of features, especially those that are not really crucial ones, but we will talk around this during my talk. So returning to the point, okay, what is so bad around if we are delivering the stuff that customer wants and maybe without verification? Well, you know, all the stories have some examples in real life. Us in real life, basically our software starts to be a bit heavy and overweighted, and you can see, okay, those cartoons that I'm using, they are funny, but is it like in real life like that? So in systems, if you have like big system that is kind of ERP based, and you can still do whatever you want, let me see if I will be able to switch it on. So you have a lot of features, you're adding more and more, your performance is slowing down, but somehow, you know, in the end of the day, it just works, right? So our users are able to finish their work, and it's basically kind of fine. But what happens when basically our software is like growing and growing, we are adding new features, we know that it's like starting to be risky, and then we just are asked for delivering this one last feature. And suddenly we can like have this on the production. So instead of like running, we are like failing. By failing, I mean basically crashing on the production. And everything is fine if we have a way to get up really quickly and easily. But sometimes we don't, especially with the softwares that are a bit older. So I'm speaking to people who are like 10 plus old software. Maybe not everything has automated tests written to it. Maybe there is no full coverage of tests as well, so we even don't know if we can predict if something will fail after adding another feature. And changes, oh my God, changes to the old features are, I think, the most terrifying thing ever, because you don't know what will happen, especially if you don't have any tests written to it. So then basically people like, you know, product people, I'm a product person, usually asks, oh, just one more, just one more, just one more. And we are a bit guilty of that situation because we are not, you know, we are just thinking, oh, you know, we have brilliant team. They are each time developing the features that we want, so maybe we can have this, squeeze this one small thing. And suddenly we are growing with the scope, growing with the requirements, and stuff, as I showed, happens. So basically we have troubles on the production. Okay, so in a nutshell, how it basically affects our product. So do we have any UX people on the room? 1, 2. So what it's starting to be challenging is trying to wrap up the complexity that we have in our product in the nice UI. And I'm not saying that our products shouldn't be complex, because that's the idea, right? We try to solve that complex business problem with good IT solution that should be easy and smooth. But if we have too much features, especially if we squeeze down on the one screen, then it's starting to be challenging. Maybe instead of having one really heavy app, we should have two. Maybe that's the solution. Maybe the modules are solution. Our users don't know which path to follow because they are lost. Also, complexity of our code base underneath is also growing if we start adding features. Our team is growing, so communication between team members is also kind of challenging because it's more and more. And guess what? Users, they're always saying that they want more, but there is a point of time that they have enough to fulfill their task. They will ask for more, but then they will just feel lost, and suddenly they will just see, okay, I can't find the feature I actually really need to have. And maybe sometimes there are even not core functionality features that we are adding. Maybe those are things that actually doesn't influence our core business process, and they are kind of, additional, shiny new things that are not giving any business value to actual users. So one more thing that is also really challenging if we add more and more features, or basically feature requests, it's like Backlog itself. And again, maybe I shouldn't tell it, because if we have more requirements, you need more people like me, so like product people. But in the end of the day, we are not producing code, right? And in the end of the day, documentation, backlog, requirements are not working code, and it's not something that we are paid for. We are paid for delivering something to the production. And if we have troubles with having the roadmap really far ahead, then we need army of people product specific in order to maintain the roadmap and the deadlines and deliverables. And also what it means that we start to commit. And if we are told that, we are working in Agile, and then someone says, we're working in Agile, but we have roadmap till 2020. And I'm thinking, okay, where is the flexibility? How you can add new things that are ad hoc if you have commitments for certain dates? It just doesn't work like that. And I just said magic word Agile. How many of you know what it is? Okay, there's a few hands. Few hands are not up, but I don't know if it's like being skeptic and saying Agile is dead, or it's more like, okay, I just don't bother. How many of you works in Agile? Okay, perfect. How many of you knows Agile Manifesto? Who is willing to tell it loud? Okay. Yeah, the trouble with modern kind of doing Agile is that we are adapting kind of Scrum. We have stand-ups, we have iterations, and basically that's it. Sometimes, if we are lucky, we have retrospective in the end. Sometimes we have planning, and we have the planning only because someone needs to produce the roadmaps 2 years ahead, so they need estimates. So they said, let's have planning session, and let's waste 8 hours for plan everything ahead for 2 years up. And let's waste another time to basically produce the backlog for this. But this is a different discussion. Agile itself is a philosophy. I will talk about it as well later on. So just having the iterations and working in the manner like this, it's not actually an Agile because we are not adaptive. And this is the whole point. So then after the roadmap, if we estimated all those things, the backlog itself is an issue as well. Why? Because it grows. And if we have thousands of user stories or backlog items or however you call them, because there is plenty of fancy names for the backlog items, you just don't know what it is and what's the priority. Is the priority changed or not? Because it's too many. And even if you have army of the product people, they need to communicate between each other, and we are creating waste. And yes, I agree, some companies has really huge product itself, so it's not really easy to work in Agile manner and make the size of the backlog in a reasonable manner. By reasonable, I mean don't having 10,000 user stories. And one of the companies I was advising for, I started with the backlog that basically was given to me, and they say, okay, that's 1,053 user stories, deal with it. And maybe 1,000 doesn't sound that bad, but if you have one person, it's just not manageable. So if you have the backlog, just ask yourself a question, is it manageable by one person? If not, then it means that maybe it should be cut down. Another thing is the priorities that I touched. If you have this, prioritization takes time, so this is another waste. So just imagine that you have a room full of business people that are connected, that need to prioritize it because they are pretty senior stakeholders. Then you have as well in the room few technology people, because without them they can't do prioritization, because this is different level of the technology complexity. So usually people want to know if they prioritize it slightly differently, how it influences the magical timelines and magical deadlines. Because obviously we work in Agile, but we won't know when it will be delivered, right? So we have like bunch of people in the room for an hour or two in terms of to make the prioritization of 1,000 items, and probably we just discuss 3 or 4, because then there is no enough time. So this is another issue that we struggle if we have a lot of requests. Another thing is how to document it. And you can, like, those people who know the Agile Manifesto can like say, come on, what's the hell the documentation is doing even here, right? In Agile, we are saying that we should have like, communication over documentation and stuff like that. However, after a few years of having the software development, you need to have some user guides, you need to have something in order to know what actually is built. Personally, I recommend to having a tests rather than documentation, because no one read it. And basically, it ends up like this. So it's like a bit fake. We just put whatever just to have it done and dusted. So automated tests are usually better if people actually are writing them well as well, but this is another issue. Okay. Are you sleeping? You are silent, so I'm afraid that yes. Okay. Well, I will try to make it more entertaining, because next part is about cleaning up. But let's quickly sum up why having too many features, requests, or basically maintaining is like difficult for our product and basically hard for us. So obviously, one side, if we have a lot of features and a lot of things in the backlog, we probably get paid, right? But on the other hand, we have troubles with our UI design. We have troubles with the complexity, and also our users in the end are not happy, even though they ask for those features, and we delivered them. So as well, like maintaining our own backlog and our roadmaps is another pain, because it just creates waste in terms of time and money. And then we say, okay, why development is so expensive, right? Those are the main issues that we are facing. And then we try to figure out, okay, how to basically clean it up and how to make communication to our customers that maybe we can make it easier. Maybe instead of having 5 features that are doing more or less the same thing, we can have 1. Maybe instead of this beautiful Excel spreadsheet integration, maybe we can just write API and the systems can communicate with each other, without human interface that actually uploads the Excel spreadsheet to the system. I know, weird idea, but APIs are working pretty well. So what we can do? So one of the ideas that sometimes development team are doing is trying to use the estimates, because if we are anyway forced to do the estimates, why not use story points? How about you guys? Do you think it's a good idea? Raise your hand if it thinks it's a good idea to use story points. Okay, there's a few people. Okay. Well, we can scare the customers with the story points. That's true, because if we give like really high estimate with something that they totally don't understand, because if we estimate in t-shirt sizes, story points, or whatever we use, they usually don't have a clue. They have their own magical spreadsheet where they put those numbers and then they produce their deadlines and their budget. And they maybe are scared for the first time, but for the second time, they already know that you delivered previously the highly estimated thing to the production and everything was fine. So because, our developers are so skillful that even though they put the huge estimate because of it's really difficult, they did it. So we are proud of it, and then we are not scared. So why else the story points are not the best idea? So first of all, as I said, our business don't know what story point is. Maybe actually I should start from asking in the room, how many of you knows what story points are? Okay, everyone, almost. Few people that didn't raise hands. Why? You don't use the story points, or don't know, or don't believe? Or
don't know yet.
Okay. So in a nutshell, story point is a way of measuring the kind of effort required to deliver one of the backlog items that you have. And it should be consistent of like three things. One is like complexity, one is risk, and one is time. Basically, for business people, this is just a number. As I said, they basically are used also to those numbers to be big, even though in theory, in Agile, if you have story bigger than 13, you should like split it to smaller parts. But sometimes we just can't, because this is the reality, and something is really complex, really difficult, and we have no clue how to break it down. For instance, you are writing the, I don't know, some forecast engine, and it's full of really heavy algorithm and math, which is basically dependent on each other. And you can't deliver half of the engine because it simply won't produce the forecast. What else? They usually have their Excel, so they put this number and then translate themselves, sometimes without even asking us. So they have no clue that story point actually represent as well the complexity. For them, it's just measurement of time. Why? Because story points usually are used also in the context of the sprint. So during the sprint, the team, so sprint is a time box where the development team is doing the work. This is used during the having a Scrum. There are also other methodologies, but for simplicity, just assume that we have Scrum. Usually, we have average numbers of story points delivered by the development team. Because it's average, we just assume the story points are equal, and we can do the average. In practice, I would argue, because the teams are different, especially if we have more than one team and we try to compare story points, it's not usually the case that we even can compare them, because those are different set of people and they differently estimate. So sometimes you have like really ridiculous situations that some teams are delivering like 5 story points, which is actually like really nice set of the features that are actually working and are tested after the sprint. And they look really bad because another team is delivering 20 story points and none of their features is actually working. So it's really tricky in order to compare them, to make the average and basically to use them. But here we go. We have burn-down charts that show the story points and all other things that help us to bring some transparency to the business. But the question is if it's actually transparency or not. But we'll discuss it during the talk, no worries. Hopefully I answered the question. It's more clear now. Perfect. Why also the Excels are dangerous? Again, deadlines. Sometimes if we give any numbers or even t-shirt sources, it means that we just committed to something, even though we really didn't want to and it wasn't the intention. The most important thing I kept for the end. Our business partners actually don't understand that the big estimate in this case was given because it's not beneficial for business. This is also kind of misunderstanding between like technology people and business people. We really want to be one team, but we don't speak the same language. Business sometimes speaks in a language we don't understand, and we speak in a language like story points that they don't understand. So that's why this miscommunication happens. If we are working in small company, in startup, usually we don't have this kind of issues because the number of people is smaller, it's easier to communicate. When our company is growing and we are working in, for instance, the setup that we have the company that actually orders the software and software vendor, it's starting to be more challenging because we have few people in a way, in a chain that need to communicate to the customer that actually the request that they have is difficult and it's not beneficial for them. For instance, you have like marketing people, sales people in between that also need to be aware that it's not only costly, it's also not really good from the software strategy perspective. Okay, so basically how to clean up and how to communicate those all things that I basically said. So first of all, how to start? The best way to start is always to having a vision, but having a vision, it's difficult, right? Because if we have something put in the linear manner, people automatically will stick dates to it and say, okay, you just committed it, you just gave me the order of the features. So roadmap issue is really hard. How we solve it in the companies I worked is product tree. What basically it is? So you are producing the nice diagram, could be mind map. We are using trees only because it's visual, and as you can see, in real life, benches are not merging to each other, and it's easier to say to our business that if we keep our features separately, that they are not merged and they are not interfering, we are just getting rid of the complexity and we are getting rid of the dependencies that are really hard to track later on if our software will grow older. So what we have like current time box and anything which is like future. Current time box can be sprint if we are working in a Scrum manner. If we are working in Kanban manner, we decided that we will be working for, let's say, a month. This could be a month of work. Everything outside is basically undefined in terms of when we are doing it. Why? Just to allow some flexibility. Let's have an example. My favorite example is like fingerprint login. It was the novelty a few years back. But what basically happens, let's say that we are like producing application, like customer application for bank. And then Apple have this beautiful innovation with fingerprint login. If you are one of the first that actually deploying the login via fingerprint to the production, it's like really good from like marketing perspective. Our customers will love it, and basically it's really good. If you have roadmap 3 years ahead and dependencies and other people actually think that you deliver something, you can't squeeze innovative ideas into your backlog. Maybe there is some flexibility, but not not this level. If you have it on the ideas level, like for instance, integration with like new technologies or new ways of logins, you just can take one of the features and put to your time box that you are working on, define it and deliver it within the time box that you having in mind. Sounds really easy. It's in the reality, it's not, because business is not usually ready to cooperate that manner. When I'm trying to convince my business colleagues why we should do it, I usually give the example of actual application that I use for my banking system, because once I had the fingerprint login, I changed my bank to the one that actually allows it. It sounds ridiculous, but a lot of customers actually do it in terms of like application just to make what is easier for you, especially if the products of like core products of the banking systems are really, really similar and there is no major difference between them. This can be differentiated even though it's technology, and it's happening across the business. If you have example of Uber, what basically did to taxis, right? Example of Airbnb, how it's basically right now works for like booking the rooms. And there's plenty of other things like that, that if our business is able to adapt technology in order to serve them, it just can win the market. So this is the flexibility. How basically how to prepare it, right? Because this looks nice and you can say, okay, how to go to the state that you actually can use it. So first of all, it's worth to basically define what are those branches. Those branches are like modules of the applications, for instance, and those are features. They are not user stories yet. Those are the ideas that we need to define and detailed. We keep them high level. Why? Because if we detailed the stuff that we want to do in the future, then after half a year, maybe it's just a waste. Maybe the technology is old and we don't want to go there. Maybe we have new idea. Maybe just word go forward faster than we thought, and basically we waste our time to write beautiful specification, to agree on details, and then it waited and we didn't even want to do it. So this is the pure waste. If we have like one-liners or like few words around this, Is that good enough to keep the idea in mind? And if we want, we can detail it in a manner that actually suits the environment around us. So after having this, and basically knowing what is our time box, we can actually start thinking, okay, what of those things we actually want to build? And this is the metric that I'm also trying to convince people to use. Money, everyone understands we want to have a profit. What is this love thing? So each of our applications have some core functionality that we want to take care of. Sometimes we want to have beautiful UI and we are like focusing on it. Sometimes we want performance. So we need to assess our new feature if it actually improves, for instance, our usability, or it improves our performance. So it's basically worth doing it. Why we actually should do it? This is another question. We, especially in the corporate world, lean startup is the weird concept. No one tests the ideas. This is at least mental test if it actually makes sense. This is our brilliant idea. It actually gives us something, right? Even in theory, is it actually someone there who is willing to pay for it? Is it actually improving our performance? At least that we can then assess our assumptions. What usually happens is we have user story in the backlog, we deliver it, and we have no assumptions connected with any profits from it, like anything. So what we can do is basically taking the ideas from our current time box and try to assess, at least mentally, where they are. So basically this corner is the most profitable in terms of, okay, it gives something good for our application and should be like decent return of the investment. Some people call it MVP. It's like easy way to define it. If you have if everyone asks you for MVP, could you give me? It's like one of the ideas you can do. Important thing is just to assess this together with business. So make a meeting, stay together in a room, discuss the ideas and understand why something is, for instance, profitable and something is not. And also from technology perspective, this also allows to business people understand why something actually improves our software and why something is not. Also, we need to have a bit of sense check. Maybe one of these cards is actually security. And maybe it's even not in the corner, but we need to have it. I mean, let's say that we have this login feature in our app, and we just ignore security, and someone will just, take all our customer details. Pretty bad, especially if we're banking. Probably we wouldn't want that. So always common sense needs to win with all those kind of metrics, that we are using. Because otherwise, we can end up really badly. And again, assessing this kind of things just helps to bring in the conversation and understanding in the same place, because this is visual. People are in the same room, they are using the sticky notes, and they are like talking. And now you can ask me, okay, but what will happen if we are cooperating via WebEx or any other conference tool that we actually not sitting in the same room, right? It's getting more and more challenging. So for the three, I would advise having a mind map. For this, again, we can use any of the drawing tools like Visio, OmniGraffle, is plenty of them, or even PowerPoint, because it's just sticking the things into one of the on the other corner. It's more entertaining if we are in the same room, but can be done. So how it looks in real life, for instance, this, yeah?
Question. The love, is that the developers who are doing the work, how much they want it, or is it the
So the love is part, no. This is more like, for instance, that you are writing the ticket engine. Like basically your customers are booking the airplane tickets, and you need to build the pricing engine that will calculate the price of the ticket and allows you to book. So love in that perspective will be the performance. Why? Because people are lazy. Just imagine that you are searching for our flight and we want to book it. We find the price that you are interested in let's say 2 milliseconds, so we are happy. If we press and we are wait 5 minutes, then it starts to be tricky in terms that probably someone just click exit and turn out different booking engine because ours was too slow. So depending on the product, this love will be different. Sometimes maybe we are more concerned about UI. Maybe we are doing the web page for hairdresser and our customers are women and they can wait 2 seconds because for them it's just, you know, looking and staring for some nice pictures of the hairstyle and they are not bothered, but they want to have really nice UI in terms that they are looking for something pretty. It's everything depends what is the core function of our application, what's meant to be doing, because it will vary. And I know that now I will sound like a consultant. It depends. And if you have the troubles with like assessing what is the one key thing in your tool, you can having like few of this kind of charts. I wouldn't advise to put it on the one, even though we can have 3 dimension. If we have good imagination, we can have 4 dimension, but then it's adding complexity. And from my perspective, when I cooperate with busy business people, they don't like complexity. They like simple things that allows them to actually understand our decision and help in assessing their decisions. Because, you know, if we ask business people for prioritization, they sometimes have the gut feeling that this feature will be like, you know, really good, but they can't actually explain why. This is something that can help in actually bringing this discussion up and saying, oh, you know, I think this feature is good because actually it brings money. Maybe it's obvious, but sometimes we don't see it. So this could be this. Or maybe it's good because we think it's good performance, at least from the business side, and then technology people say, oh, no. Connecting with this overseas database with the tickets from, let's say, some weird airline that no one even thought that it exists, it's not a good idea because then each query will be taking longer because we need to query this overseas server. Maybe it's in China, so it's really hard to get in, and we maybe even lose the connection in between and we won't be able to get back the answer. So it's actually a terrible idea. So this is the level of conversation that we can bring in and validate our assumption of the both sides. But what else we can do? Once we have this corner over here assessed, you can actually see that there is a plenty. You know what happens usually during those sessions? That we have only few that are like less important, and everything is really profitable and everything is really improving, right? So what we can do next, because we still need to pick what is basically happening. I use another metrics just to see, okay, is it improving the core business functionality of the tool or not? Let's say that, again, we have the example of the booking engine, right? And let's say that we want to have the one of the features, that the first feature that we want to have in a queue is, let's say, someone would like to book the ticket and choose the color of the aircraft. Maybe it's new hipster way of booking tickets. You don't care about price. You just want to choose the color of your aircraft. In order to have that, there is some dodgy database that you need to connect in, and you are tracking to, okay, I know that from my perspective, one of the things is how quickly I can retrieve my, my booking and the price. Another is, let's say, UI and how complex UI is in terms of actually picking this color. And let's say the third thing is if I actually can do booking afterwards once I retrieve the price, right? So those are the 3 core things that I'm actually caring about if I'm doing the booking engine. And let's say that in the first case, so the performance actually is pretty bad because this database is somewhere and it's disconnected and I have really a lot of troubles with APIs. So I can guess that actually it will slow down. It's my assumption. Later on, we'll talk about validating it. Then in terms of the UI, maybe actually it's not hard to improve the UI in order to add one checkbox with pick of the colors, so it's not influencing bad, and could be good from the marketing perspective because you say, oh, you see, it's beautiful new feature. No other booking engine has the color of the aircraft. So now you can choose the pink one if you wish, or red, or blue. And then you can basically try to assess, okay, if it's good or bad. Why we are saying that there are like three key business things. Because if you have 2, it's hard to tell, right? Because one is good, another is bad, and then which is the winning one? If you have 3, it's not too complex, and you can still pick. If you start growing, probably 5, it's still okay, but 9 it starts to be like time consuming. This is like the quick thing that allows you to assess if the idea is actually making sense or not. If we decide that it makes, then you can obviously measure the performance and all the things that I was talking about, and then check the numbers. Why I put this magical thing over here? Because at the beginning, when we discuss the ideas and we don't have yet the detailed requirements, because this is the stage that we don't have detailed requirements, we just don't know. And trying to put the number, well, I know few magicians that have like, you know, the special crystal balls and they're saying that they can estimate. But in my practical life, I've barely seen good estimates at this level, at high requirement level. Why? Because there is so many unknown and so many things that we simply can't predict that it's really, really hard. And again, we are wasting time to do the estimates. We are quarreling, we are trying to figure out the number, and then in the end of the day, there will be someone who tell, oh, you know, you committed to that number, and it's not correct. Why? Even if we try to do our best. So that's why it's better to use something like, you know, these funny things that maybe our business will be like laughing from, but at least give us some kind of quick answer. Okay, those are the ideas that are worth to basically detail down. Again, unfortunately, Word it's not so easy and good for everyone, and sometimes we need to use estimates. Some people are bold and saying, you know, quit the job if they ask you for estimates. I'm not so bold, maybe because I'm a consultant and I say it depends. But basically, you can also bring some flavor to the estimate and make them more understandable for people across and making them more high level quicker. One of the ideas was just to using those funny faces. Another is asking to add the business value. If you remember the diagram I showed you with the ROI, this is one of the things that we can use to assessing business value ourselves. Because if something is in the down corner and then business says, oh, no, it's actually having a big business value, then we can start asking questions, okay, why? Because maybe there is something behind the money. Maybe it's not something that gives you actually money, but maybe it's good for marketing perspective or for something else that we need to understand and it's actually good to deliver. And sometimes we fail in communicating that. Another is actually giving the number which represents the risk. Why? Because as I said, people don't understand that story points includes the risk. If we have explicit risk written down, it's easier to actually understand. So let's say that we have the user story, so the backlog item and story points. For those who are not familiar with Agile and with the sequence that is used, 21, it's really, really big. Again, some teams don't bother and have the big estimates. In practical life, this is really complex, really risky, and really time-consuming. So what we can do, if we have this user story, and let's stick to the example I said at the beginning. So we are the bank, we have the logging system, and we want new way of logging. And let's say this new way of logging is this fingerprint, but across the devices. Or maybe voice recognition logging, because fingerprint is no longer a thing, right? Because now it's everywhere. So let's say that we have voice recognition. And we say, okay, we have no clue about this technology. It's risky because security issues. We have no clue how to do it in a way that maybe someone else's voice won't be recognized for my customer. But from business value, maybe it's tricky, maybe it's another thing to be, and basically we see that it will sell, and maybe we just drag from our customers from other banks just because we have new fancy feature connected with voice recognition. What we can do, if we really don't want to do this feature, we can break it down to alternatives that we can actually present. Okay, let's do something else, which is slightly less risky. It's still big because it's new technology. It has lower business value because let's say this is all devices, and let's say this is device that is most frequently used by our customers. So maybe it's Android phone, for instance, because our customers are using Androids. Maybe it's Windows phone, who knows? But this is majority of, I don't know why you're laughing, guys. So who knows what this is? Basically, it's something that you can easily detect just looking at your database and determine, okay, what are our main customer base, so what we are targeting. Then we're reducing our risk a bit because we are just targeting one technology, so it's easier. And maybe instead of voice recognition, we have something else that is maybe easier in terms like basically restless scheme. So we can present it. It's, anyway, it can be game changer as well. But because we are reducing the number of devices and technologies, it's easier to experiment with. On the other hand, we can also present something totally different. So instead of voice recognition, I think that some Android phones have like gestures. So let's say gestures login, which can be a bit risky because someone can see our gesture and it's easier to see than actually typing the numbers that are usually our passwords. Business value is probably low because not a lot of people may be familiar with the technology and it's still complex. So we can compare the options and give our business a choice. Then it actually brings the conversation in and we can see, okay, what needs of our users, of our end user are actually made by the stories that we are presenting. Sometimes we can see that, for instance, in our alternative story to the voice-over login, maybe not all the needs are, fulfilled because people are using Siri or additional things and want to just open my banking account and it's just happening. And I can't do it if I have this alternative user story. So maybe actually this says, okay, sorry guys, you still need to do it, but maybe it's just not important and we can live with it, without it, at least for the experimenting phase. So again, this allows us to have a discussion. Just quick thing, remember to add recommendations in the end because sometimes those kind of things are not obvious what we are trying to say. So if we present all those tables with all those comparisons, just say what you think is the best way to do it. Okay, one of the last topics I want to talk about, because feature gluttony. Okay, in one side is like adding features and trying to have more and more, and actually even not assessing if we need this or not. If we did all the exercises with, you remember the tree, it was full of ideas, then we went through the diagram, so we pick up only those from the corner, and then we narrow down even those from the corner by like just mentally assessing the performance and stuff. And we figured out, okay, those are the 5 items out of, let's say, 20 that we wanted. We just detailed them, delivered them, and then we can basically assess if it was good or not and measure. But how about actually deleting the wrong ideas, right? Or the features that we developed? This seems to be really scary. I mean, who knows what will happen, right? Sometimes basically, maybe we collapse, right? So business, when they're here, okay, our code base is getting complicated. How about removing stuff that you don't need? And they are terrified. Oh my God. First of all, we have our marketing materials. Our users probably are using it. There's like, and what will happen with the code base? We don't know if you developers know what will happen. And sometimes we even not communicating clearly that don't worry, we have automated tests, so once we delete the feature, everything will work. If we don't have tests, then probably I wouldn't suggest even thinking about deleting. But assuming that right now everyone wants at least to have a test, we are just trying to add them. So what it basically means that uncertainty causes fears. So if we put automatic tests and communicate to business that don't worry, we have the coverage and we can actually experiment with this new feature, and if it's not working, we can remove it. It's basically bringing a bit of a certainty to the business that suddenly our application won't just fall like the kitten at the beginning when I show you, right? Because business people also, they're afraid about this, that they will need to face angry customers or angry users because suddenly something broke down and we don't know why. Okay, a few stories from my life around removing features. My first work was in an internal IT department, and we were delivering software for basically putting ads to the broadcasting TV. And there was a few features that weren't used at all. At least we thought that they are not used. So we decided, okay, let's measure if someone actually clicks there or not. So we put additional thing to the code and start observing. We observed for a half a year. No one used it. And then was festive period. By festive, I mean like Christmas and stuff. We decided to hide the feature then. And guess what? It was the feature that was used only during the festive period because there were some special ads during that term and need to be like specially labeled. So then people start asking, okay, do you know we had this feature, but we can't find it. I don't know, something changed in the UI. Fortunately, we didn't delete it. We just unhide it and everything was working fine. So one lesson is understand what you're hiding because you have seasonality in the applications as well. And we can argue that if something is used once a year or twice a year, maybe you don't need it. Sometimes you do because this is the core business functionality and you can't survive without it. So understand what you are hiding, measure it, and if no one basically says anything for a long period of time, hide it, wait a bit just in case someone will suddenly remember that it exists. Communicate across that you plan to delete it because you have the numbers that prove that no one uses it. It's still hidden, so you can unhide it if someone will just start arguing that they need it. But if they don't, you can just then delete it and having cleaner code base. This is one of the approaches that is basically working. If you are more adventurous, so you are maybe working in smaller company and you can hide the thing and basically do it more in autonomous way, that's even better for you. This is another advice for the big companies with like a lot of people involved. Another thing, if you are thinking about hiding something and you are working for, let's say, software vendor or software house, make certain that you communicate it across marketing teams. Why? They have magical PowerPoints and they have demo instances. So if you hide something on demo instance, and God forbid, your salesperson or marketing person just want to present it to the customer, they will look silly. If they look silly because they had something on the slides and it's not on the tool, they will be angry at you. And also, it will be really awkward situation across the business. Okay, why actually it happened? So it's really important to actually communicate it across and make certain that everyone knows, everyone updated their materials, and everyone are happy. How to actually convince people that deleting is something that we should do? Performance. So especially if we have applications that are slightly older and it's harder and harder to actually keep selling them because everyone knows that they're slow. You can say, you know, actually we can improve the performance so it will be easier to sell customers that is, you know, nice and quick and smooth, so your job will be easier. Another thing is maybe our software will get more stable. You know, because if marketing people need to sell something that constantly breaks even during the demos, it's hard job for them as well, right? We are not happy as a developers because we have something which is like breaky and we are not really proud of it. They are not happy because they need to struggle during the demo presentation. So we can really cooperate and talk to each other and try to get rid of the things that are not used. It's especially important if we have old software or if we know that our software will be used and it will be growing, and then we'll be struggling with performance. So this is like giving a bit more clarity and certainty to removing stuff. Okay, because I'm running out of time, I will try to quickly wrap up and hopefully you have some questions. So why, if we are asked to deliver more and more, instead of just getting the money and get it shipped, we should actually think? So first of all, we struggle with the UX. Then our customers struggle with our UX as well. We struggle ourselves with the complexity because it's just growing. We have troubles with our roadmaps and backlogs because we need army of people to manage it. We need army of developers to estimate it, and everyone in the process are getting miserable. So how we can actually try to talk with people and convince them to change? So first of all, instead of having linear roadmap that someone sticks the dates to, having something that is not linear. It could be the product tree. By the way, it's from the Innovation Games. It's really good book with a lot of ideas. So really recommend to adapt. I just did my variation of the product tree. There's plenty of other things that you can use. If you are in a distributed team, I recommend mind maps because they are having the same concept, so you can't merge the branches, and this means that you're just avoiding the dependencies, which is also important. If you're getting rid of them, it's just easier. Okay, the next thing that you can actually do, out of all the ideas, just select those that you think are beneficial from the business perspective and also from key business process perspective from your tool. Then remember that if you are giving like high-level assessment of the features, it's better than giving exact numbers, because unless you have the skills of reading from the crystal ball, it's really hard to guess the exact numbers. If you need to estimate, try to give alternatives and try to bring down like story points for something more meaningful as well, like adding risks and adding the business value, because then it helps you to assess. One more remark over here. If you struggle to actually have business involved in giving you business value, if you have discussion around this, you can try to assess it as well yourself. And then say, okay, let's double check if you agree with this. Sometimes they say, no, you are totally wrong. This is lower business value. And then again, it's easier to assess if you are like prepared. Okay, that's it. I hope that you enjoyed. Vote green when you'll be going out. And do you have any questions? Yeah?
So you mentioned a bit about features and getting features done.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, how would you like, let's say for example, a team finishes 2 or 3 features,
Mm-hmm.
and then they have to, and then they realize, oh, we need to restructure, no, that's not a term.
Refactor?
Refactor, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. So they have to refactor to actually make the code nicer, sort of things, but that actually might take a bit longer than like maybe another week or 2 and sort of things. And how would you justify that?
Okay, so there are like those. Okay, so in terms of the things connected like with refactoring, I believe it's actually business value behind this as well. Why? Because it means that we can maintain our code easier, so it's cheaper. It's really hard to measure and justify in terms that, okay, why it's cheaper, especially for people who don't know. But we can try to measure. So especially if you have the engine-related things that you calculate something, and you basically just found out that maybe instead of using Scala, you should use Kotlin because it's like easier for some reason. Right? Let's have it like an example. You can try to measure how much time on average the current calculation takes and what are the improvements that you think that will be delivered after refactoring. So obviously then you need to assess, and sometimes you will be wrong, and instead of having performance improvement, you are going the same way as you did. But this is one of the approaches. Also, when you are trying to convince business that refactoring is actually needed, again, being like error prone and being certain that our code base is stable is another thing that you can bring up in terms of, okay, now we are relatively fresh, but let's try to be more, I don't want to use word future proof because some companies are like really like time to market and they don't care if it's future proof. They want to deliver it because our competitors are like really near us and we want to have something deployed. And then we also need to understand from technology perspective, okay, so maybe we can break down this refactoring to parts, and instead of doing everything, we just do baby steps. So this is the kind of conversation that we need to understand as well. Usually if we are a software house, we want something future-proof because it means that we will develop on top of that, especially if our idea was already validated and we are already on the market and we know that our customers are buying. So maybe it's actually a time to invest for something better. The scary thing about refactoring is some people do refactoring only of the sake of refactoring. And we also need to understand if the thing that we are actually touching, what are the benefits, right? Because if it's the core feature that we are doing refactoring and we know that we build something on top of that, yes, then it's worth. If it's something that we think that we may delete in the future and no one will use it, then I would hesitate if we actually want to do it. Another approach is actually a bit like maybe we're taking one step back, is doing spikes first and then developing actual features. And then it's easier to justify why we are switching the technology, because we just assessed that, you know, something that we used before, it's not really good because, I don't know, we can't write our optimization engine because there is not enough math function in the language that we choose, or maybe it's too slow, or maybe we just don't know the language and the entry level is too high and we can't learn and we don't have developers to do it. So those are the different things that we can try assess. I would advise to try to write down the points that you are thinking, why you are thinking that the refactoring will be beneficial. Because if you tell refactoring to the business person, they will ask, oh, but how I can eat it? Oh, it's not food? So what it is, right? They don't understand the word. So you need to say, okay, it's connected with our work. It will make our work easier. We can develop new functionalities on top of that if we do it. The performance can be better by, I don't know, 15%, blah, 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 depending on what the refactoring actually does. Yeah.
Would you look at the same process? Before you had a really good slide, we had a UI which has got lots and lots of stuff on it.
Yeah.
And where I'm working at the moment, pretty much that's the space we're in.
Yeah.
We're going to, so from that point, we want to go to a new product. So
Yeah.
to do that,
Yeah.
we have to grab that. Then there's a backlog that sits there as well, and they have to be rationalised
Yeah.
into an MVP. So that process of getting, even just getting this mess, and
Yeah.
then even doing any of those storyboards, the tree, stuff like that, you can imagine it's quite a big task.
Yeah.
How would you, like, just at a really high level, how would you approach something like that?
So I was once in so when I worked in a company with software that was developed like before Internet Protocol just even started to exist, and the company decided, okay, let's rewrite it.
Yeah.
It's 2010, so this is really old, we need a new one. So as you can imagine, by this more than 20 years, there was like a lot of features in that old software, and obviously everything was needed for the customers. So first of all, it's good to find smaller customer that it's not yet a customer who haven't seen the original things. When we have this smaller customer that is willing to invest a bit of their time to have like POC, beta, or however we call it, then we try to narrow down actually cutting from old design and old features. Why? Because first of all, time moves forward, and actually our customers don't need the old features, but they don't realize that. You know, sometimes you find in the I overrun, so really quickly saying that sometimes we don't realize that we are using things that are not useful anymore, and we can make things simpler, and instead of having 10 functionalities, we can replace it with one. So first step, finding someone willing to experiment. Second thing will be like actually, sorry to say, getting rid of the old approach. I think the main enemy actually will be your business people who are really used to it. But maybe they can understand if you present, okay, let's start from the blank page and try to produce new ideas from the scratch.
Yeah.
So if you haven't been using it, start from the, like actually having brainstorming with the tree and having blank, without even modules, without any ideas. I would just advise this, yeah. Sorry, we need to stop. Really thank you for the conversation and thank you for being here.